What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Mind of Marsal podcast. This is episode number 126. I am your host, Armando Marsal. You can find all of my work over at fantasyguru.com. Follow me on the Twitter machine at Armando_Marsal, as well as on Threads and Instagram at Mind of Marsal, and now on TikTok at Mind of Marsal Pod. Before jumping into it, I just want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. I greatly appreciate you all. Remember, folks, if you're enjoying the podcast, if you're enjoying the content, enjoying the episodes, please make sure you follow, rate, and review the podcast wherever it is you're consuming it. This show can now be found on YouTube as well at Mind of Marsal. That's my YouTube channel right there. So make sure you're checking out all of my shows, all of my posts, all of my shorts, all of that stuff there on YouTube. Make sure you're following, subscribing, and liking all of that stuff as well. Anything you want me to discuss on the podcast, any topics, anything, any players you want me to discuss, anything, email it to mindofmarsal@gmail.com, and I'll make sure to talk about it here on this show. I am riding solo today, so this is a solo pod. I'm going to talk about a few takeaways from week 8, look at some of the injuries here. We're going to take a look at waiver wires as we head into week 9. I also want to talk about some roster management, some buys and sells, some trade conversation here. We get a lot of these questions in our Discord channel, and I feel like trading is a hot topic in some leagues. I'll be honest with you, in a lot of the leagues that I do, there's not a lot of activity as far as trades are concerned, but it seems that there are a lot of leagues out there where trades are very important. There's a lot of active leagues. So if you're one of those leagues, I'll discuss some trades, my thoughts on trading, how I would go about trades, and kind of what I'm doing right now is really mid-season, right? Like we're entering week 9, so we're halfway through the year now, and a lot of us pretty much know what we got as far as our rosters are concerned. We definitely can continue to, maintain our rosters, clean our rosters. So I did want to talk about that on the show today. But before we jump into any of that, let's look at some of the takeaways here from this past weekend and week 8. And on Monday night, the Chiefs, they got off to a very slow start there against Washington, but they ended up, dominating in that game. We saw Rushy Rice, very much involved. He caught all 9 of his targets for 93 yards and a touchdown, led the team in targets. He went back to his regular snap share that we saw him playing last year before, the injury there. So Rice has established himself as the number 1 wide receiver here in Kansas City, as expected. For those of you who held on to him, took a shot, you're pretty happy with the results thus far. And I think that's here to stay. I don't see that really going anywhere. I'm expecting Rice to continue to be a focal point in the passing game for the Kansas City Chiefs, who Patrick Mahomes is having himself a hell of a year, guys. Like, I mean, right now, entering this week, QB1 on the season, just continues to deliver on a week-to-week basis. Yes, he threw a couple of interceptions there against Washington, but came back and, carved up that secondary with a big second half here. So I'm expecting Mahomes to continue to deliver for fantasy managers. This is a team that really doesn't run the ball all that great, right? Like the Pacheco, Kareem Hunt, I mean, there's not so much excitement here out of this backfield when you look at it. So I'm not surprised to see Rice, delivering here. The 9 targets, like I mentioned, were a team high. It was actually Travis Kelce who led the team in receiving yards at this past Monday. He had upwards of 95 yards as well there. He also scored a touchdown, kind of getting a vintage Kelce performance there. So this offense is rolling. Look, it had been kind of stagnant, I guess, for the last couple of years. Not like an explosive offense, and we're kind of seeing, Mahomes back to his old ways here, lighting up defenses, carving up defenses. A team that I think is going to continue to roll here in 2025. Terry McLaurin returned to action, and he caught 3 or 4 targets for 54 yards in a touchdown. So welcome back, Terry McLaurin. It wasn't the greatest of performances, but the fact that, he did catch a touchdown here. He had 54 yards. I think his role is solidified here. He's going to definitely benefit when Jaden Daniels returns. But for those who hung on to McLaurin, or for those who saw that he was dropped and added him off waivers, kudos to you guys. He is definitely, on the right track in his first game back here. Going back to Rashee Rice, last game he had 10 targets. This game he had 9. So 19 targets there for him. 3 total touchdowns in his first 2 games here since returning from a 6-game suspension. Looking into some of the injuries that we saw this past weekend, Saquon Barkley left in the third quarter of Sunday's game against the Giants. He had suffered a groin injury there. Luckily for the Eagles, there is a bye week coming up here in week 9, so they have a week off, giving Barkley an extra week to get healthy there. I, if you're a Barkley owner, I recommend adding Tank Bigsby here. He's the one that stepped in for the injured Barkley, rushed for 104 yards, a touchdown. Will Shipley would be involved in the passing game as well, should Barkley miss any time. But it appears that Bigsby is the guy that they would lean on. Dillon, non-factor there this weekend for them. Quinshawn Judkins, another running back that suffered an injury this past weekend. Again, another running back that is going into the bye week, so he will have an extra week to heal up. It's a shoulder injury there. And if he is unable to play in week 10, it looks like Dylan Sampson will be that guy filling in for him. So again, if you have Judkins and you're trying to prepare for beyond week 9, week 10, I wouldn't go out of my way and be adding Dylan Sampson just yet. But again, if you have an extra roster spot, if you're a Judkins manager and you want to make sure that you have that backfield solidified, I would expect Sampson to see an increased role should Judkins miss any time whatsoever. Cam Scatterby, man, that was I saw that injury, and needless to say, it was it. You saw like the entire energy from the Giants. It was just deflating. He is someone that was bringing a ton of positivity, great energy, like lighting the fire to this offense, and to see him suffer that ankle injury, it was gruesome. He dislocated his ankle, already had surgery. He's going to miss the remainder of the year. I think we can all agree Tyron Tracy will be that featured back for New York here. If you look from weeks 5 on last season in 2024, Tracy averaged 17.5 opportunities per game. If he's out there in your waiver wire, we'll talk about waivers a little later, but I do view him as a priority. We haven't been spending much in the last couple of weeks on waivers. This is a week where I do think you could spend a little bit more. I'm looking at anywhere between 20 and 30% of your fab on Tyron Tracy here, if he's out there. And if you are a major need at the position, right? Like if you're really hurting and if you're relying on someone like a Tony Pollard as your RB2 right now, I think it's okay to be a little bit more aggressive with someone like a Tyron Tracy Jr. here. Like we are expecting opportunities. I know there's some concerns out there as far as whether the Giants go and make a move. Sure, they might, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a move that's going to be too impactful here for Tracy, right? Like I don't expect them to go and get a big name, right now before the trade deadline. This is not a team that's playing for much this season. This is a team that, we can expect continue to build on this foundation that they have. They obviously found their quarterback in Jackson Dart. Obviously Malik Neighbors out for the season. That he's going to be a big, piece for them in the future. Scadaboo also going to be a piece for them in the future. This is a young team, a good foundation. No need really to go and invest in a veteran running back to help out this backfield right now. I think Tracy Jr. showcased that he's very capable of handling the workload here for the New York Giants, and that's what I'm expecting here in the upcoming weeks here, regardless of whether they add someone or not. A few takeaways from this week, and I'll start by the Colts. I mean, it was a dominant performance over the Tennessee Titans. I get it. Titans are not a good defense. They're not a good team. They're actually terrible. But you're seeing Daniel Jones playing some really good football. He carved them up for 3 touchdowns, 272 yards there. Fourth straight game with multiple touchdown passes, right? And you look at what he's been able to do this season. They have the best record in football at 7-1, right? The offense looks good. Defense is playing well. And this is one of those teams that many look at and it's like, well, it's they're okay, Daniel. They're a fucking good team. All right. They have a hell of an offensive line. They have the best running back in football right now. You have an elite young tight end in Tyler Warren. Michael Pittman is probably one of the more underappreciated receivers in the NFL right now. I've been talking about him for weeks. He was a buy low candidate before last week for me. Obviously, you're not going to be able to buy low on him this week. Playing just some great football. He offers a solidified floor here. Someone who has delivered really good numbers throughout the season. And just I'm still getting questions on whether to start him or not. Yeah, the answer is you start Michael Pittman each and every week. Like he's an every week starter for me. He's not someone I'm benching. You look at the results. He's finished in PPR scoring. It's wide receiver 9, wide receiver 63, wide receiver 13, 22, 20, 78, 14, 2. I mean, he's been a top 24 wide receiver in more games than not. In fact, he's done it in all but 2 games this season. So someone who should be an every week starter in most leagues, in most lineups. And I mean, just a great performance. He's found the end zone in all but 2 games this season. It's just a stellar season here for, Michael Pittman and company. So I really like what I'm seeing from him. I think this is, I've been saying this all season. This is here to stay. Shane Steichen. I mean, what a phenomenal job he's done here with this offense with Daniel Jones, putting this team, these players in positions to succeed. And this is what good coaching does, ladies and gentlemen. Like this is precisely what good coaching does. They're going to find the right pieces, they're going to find the right tools, and they're going to put them all here and find a way for them to succeed. I'm not saying that they're like the Eagles, but when you look at this Colts team, they're a very complete team on both sides of the ball. They're a very complete team, and they're very difficult to defend against. When you have a running back like Jonathan Taylor, right? In addition to all of these pieces that we just discussed, it's very hard to game plan for you, right? Look what he did this past week in 153 rushing yards, 3 total touchdowns, which included a receiving touchdown there as well. That's 9 touchdowns in his last 3 games against the Tennessee Titans. When you look at what he's done this year, he's already had 4 games with at least 3 touchdowns this season. That's tying an NFL record for that kind of production through 8 weeks of football, right? So he's currently RB1 without question. Jonathan Taylor is a certified stud there. So for those who drafted him, you're definitely excited about what you're seeing here on the football field. James cooked. He cooked, baby. I mean, we talked about it on last week's show on the DFS show there on episode 125 of the Armando Marsal podcast. We also discussed it on Sunday morning's live stream. I also discussed this on Friday night with Tyler Beaker on his live stream there at fantasyguru.com. And he was set up for a big game, right? Like the Panthers, yes, they've done a better job at defending the run than we've seen in years past, but this is still a very good run offense for Buffalo, and we know that they lean on James Cook. We expected them to play with the lead here, and to no surprise, he finished with a career high 216 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns on 19 attempts. He ripped one off for 64 yards, and he ripped another one off for 21-yard touchdown run. I mean, we've seen the numbers here for Cook all season long. He's been delivering consistent numbers for fantasy managers all year long. Wide receiver, running back 4, running back 2, running back 8, running back 10, running back 42, running back 23, running back 2. That's weekly finishes in PPR scoring settings. Cook has a touchdown in all but 2 games this season and continues to deliver the goodness here. Again, he's another one of those players that there was a lot of skepticism on whether the touchdown upside can continue, whether it was going to be regression in the touchdown department. I was guilty of that. I thought there was going to be some touchdown regression, and thus far, that has not been the case. In fact, he has been right on par with where he was last year and is on pace for another monster year here as we enter week 9. So another big performance here by a running back. And these two were not the only ones, ladies and gentlemen. We also had Breece Hall, who just had a huge week, 133 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He also threw for a passing touchdown there. It really helped this this Jets team get over that Bengals and the fourth quarter rally there, a come from behind win. So it was good to see the Jets finally get that win this season. It was a great performance by Breece Hall. And I know that the Jets situation is not great, right? Like the offense is awful. There was going to be a quarterback change, but then Tyrod Taylor got hurt. They don't have Garrett Wilson right now. It's a complete shit show when you look at it in New York. The lone bright spot, Breece Hall. He's just continuing to deliver. It's not always great performances, sure, but the volume has been there, and he has these kind of, this kind of potential in him here where he can truly have these kind of monster games. I'm in the business. I'm not in the business. I've seen him recommended as a sell high candidate. I'm not in the business of selling Breece Hall. For me, he's been involved in a lot of trade rumors conversations and stuff like that. Whether he stays in New York or he is traded, I look at Brees Hall. He's when you just overall, right? Potential talent, everything. One of the best running backs in football. Yeah, he could do everything, a little bit of everything. Catch out, passes the backfield, running between tackles, pass protect. Like he checks off most, if not all, of the boxes that you're looking for the running back. One more running back that had a big week, and that was Barkley. We talked a little bit about him before. He had 150 rushing yards, two total touchdowns there. He had a 65-yard run showing that big playability. Now, he did suffer that groin injury, so it's something you definitely want to keep an eye on. But with the bye week up ahead, fantasy managers have a little bit of breathing room, right? Like they can breathe a sigh of relief, right? We don't have to panic. We don't have to, be worried at this time. I strongly recommend to being proactive, right? Tank Bixby out there. Just lock up your backfield. Like that's what we do. We talk about this all the time over at fantasyguru.com. We're handcuffing. We're, the right situations too, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that here with the roster management section of the podcast. Miami and Atlanta, I mean, talk about the unexpected, right? Miami came out firing on all cylinders. They really controlled the game clock there. We saw that, time of possession was a big thing for that offense against the Falcons. The Falcons were without Michael Penix, without Drake London, so they were missing some key pieces. But the fact that they really did lean on Bijan Robinson a lot early on in this game really was frustrating and annoying, right? Robinson was in a prime position against some really bad Dolphins run defense. I'm not saying this past weekend does not change my perspective, my mind at how bad this Dolphins defense is. In fact, I'm going to continue to target them Thursday night with Derrick Henry. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to go right back to the wall here, and I'm going to continue to target this run defense. If you're out there with Derrick Henry, who had two touchdowns this past week and a pretty decent game there, he actually surpassed Walter Payton for the fifth most all-time rushing touchdowns there. Derrick Henry with his two touchdowns this weekend. So I'm going to continue to roll and pick on this Dolphins run defense. As for their offense, look, Tua had a really good game. He was playing with that visor, had the eye issue, and it appears that he plays better with one eye than he does with two eyes, right? Like that's what it is. Um, I'm not buying this. I think this was a 1 week situation. I'm not expecting this Dolphins offense to continue rolling. They still have a lot of issues there. The offensive line is a liability. Tua Tagovailoa just continues to make. I know he looked great this week, but he continues to make bad decisions. He looks flustered when he's pressured. Doesn't keep his composure in the pocket. Like, it's just so many red flags here, and this is a situation where we could see a fire sale, right? Like we could still see a fire sale before the trade deadline. This team is not playing for anything this year. I think that once the season's over with, the Tua Tagovailoa experiment will be done in Miami. So I can see where they, ship a couple of pieces for draft picks and some future assets here, rather than staying put and keeping some of these guys here. Patriots in the AFCs. Talk about a team where going into the season, there was a lot of high expectations. Drake Maye, like, was someone that I was very excited about going into this year. Someone who I loved really coming out of college, was my favorite quarterback in his draft class. And I said this, I did not like the landing spot at the time, right? That 1 year, that first year was going to be brutal. New England just did not have the pieces. They were a team that kind of was transitioning, in rebuild mode. They did a lot this offseason, and they added some key pieces both in the draft and in free agency. They beefed up the offensive line. They they hired Mike Vrabel as their head coach. You got McDaniels as your offensive coordinator. Like this, they made a lot of moves here this offseason to improve this team. And now they're sitting at 6-2, and they've been playing really good football. Like this is a team, they got off to a slow start this past weekend, but they got things moving. Drake Maye, another really solid performance there, 282 yards, completing 18 of 24 passes for 3 touchdowns. And again, I mean, this is one of those teams that they already beat the Bills. They're 6-2. They're looking really good, and one of those teams that you don't want to play, right? Like if you're an opposing team, if you're competing, if you're trying to play for a playoff spot down the stretch, New England's probably not going to want to be one of those teams you want to play this upcoming season. They're playing really good football, well coached team, And right now, it's smooth sailing with this team. They're doing really good here. Really like what I am seeing from Drake Maye. He's emerging as one of the youngest and brightest young quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think the future is bright. As a Miami fan, you go from having to deal with Tom Brady for so many years, and New England, I think they found their franchise quarterback. And I'm not saying that Drake May is Tom Brady, that he's going to be a Hall of Famer, but I will say this: he's a hell of a quarterback. He's a winner. He plays with confidence. And from a fantasy standpoint, I mean, if you drafted him, you're super excited with the results thus far. He's an every week starter and someone that I have no problem with, as your QB1 in any format, really. So for me, I'm looking at New England as a serious contender here in the AFC this year. They're just playing some really, really good football. Not so good football. Caleb Williams struggled. He's had some mixed results. And what's crazy about Caleb Williams is he has shown minor flashes throughout the season where you're like, oh, okay, well maybe that's the hope, but for the most part, it hasn't been great. Like he has not been that good. He's shit the bed in critical moments. He threw an interception this weekend in a critical situation. A lot of mental mistakes from this offense. They collapsed in the red zone down the stretch late in the game, and he's now throwing a pick in three of his last four games. Right, like it's not what we wanted from Caleb Williams. It's not what we expected here. I was always lower on Caleb Williams, and I'm not sitting here and saying, "Well, I'm right on him." I'm not right on him. I think the verdict, is still out. Still too early to determine whether he's a complete bust or whether he's going to pan out as we hoped. If some hoped he would, but I'll tell you right now, I've seen more bad than good from Williams. And to me, when you have this kind of supporting cast, you have a good offensive line, you have a good coach, you have a good run game, you got to start figuring it out, right? So I really think Williams needs to start figuring it out and just start producing better and more efficient numbers here for the Bears. They've done everything they can to put him in a position to succeed. It's now his job to actually take that, advantage of the situation and succeed and produce. So for me, it's one of those situations where I don't view Caleb Williams as an every week starter, by the way. A lot of people have Daniel Jones and Caleb Williams on their roster. I've seen that a lot in our Discord, and I've said this very honestly. Daniel Jones is an every week starter. Like in fantasy football, Daniel Jones is an every week starter. Top 12 quarterback for me every week, regardless of matchup. He has that rushing element. Yeah, he plays on a great team. He's been producing solid numbers. If you have Caleb Williams, if you have Daniel Jones on your roster, there's no need for two quarterbacks. We're going to talk about this with roster management very soon. No need for two quarterbacks. You're starting Daniel Jones every week, not Caleb Williams. So keep that in mind. He is a risky weekly starter, Caleb Williams. Does he offer upside? Sure. Does he have a pretty significant ceiling? Sure. Is he matchup driven? Absolutely. So just keep that in mind there when it comes to Caleb Williams. A quarterback that actually looked good this past weekend, CJ Stroud. He did it without Nico Collins too, which was very surprising. Kind of looked like the rookie, Stroud that we saw when he was really carving up defenses and producing uber efficient numbers. He threw for 318 yards this past weekend against the 49ers, two touchdown passes there. Looked really good. Again, he did it without Nico Collins. And what's been the biggest issue there in Houston really has been the offensive line, right? When they can give him a little bit of time, when they can buy him time, he's going to do great things. But the problem is they've been just terrible. I mean, terrible this season. One of the worst offensive lines in football. So, yeah, it's very difficult to, produce high-end numbers with a very, bad offensive line. And when I mean bad, I mean very, very bad offensive line. In fact, when you look at the numbers here and you look at Houston and you look at their pass blocking numbers, I mean, they're what? They're really bad. They're really bad. And for me, I just look at this situation as I think this offense could get better. I think this offense could do what we saw them do this weekend, but it's always going to go down to the offensive line. When you look at this backfield, it's Woody Marks for me. I know Nick Chubb is still very much involved, but if if anyone's asking me who I want to as my guy here is Woody Marks. I still expect this to be a committee, but Marks is the better side of the committee in my opinion here. And you saw the Texans defense; they did a phenomenal job against the 49ers. This is a stout defense, ladies and gentlemen. Like the Texans are a stout defense. So if you have them, you're rolling them out each and every week, regardless of matchups. We get asked a lot of defensive questions. I like to play matchups with defenses, but if I have a defense like the Houston Texans, I'm going to go ahead and play that defense like each and every week, regardless of who they play. Like it does not matter. A couple other little takeaways here for me, and you look at Jamar Chase. This is why I let people know: do not panic. Right? Let's not overreact to certain situations. When Joe Burrow went down, there was some concerns about, oh well, what are we gonna do with Jamar Chase? Well, you just have to temper expectations with Jamar Chase when Joe Burrow goes down, right? Especially with Jake Browning. He had some part performances. We didn't expect them to trade for Joe Flacco, but they did trade for Joe Flacco. And guess what? Since then, it's been insane. He had another monster week this week, catching 12 of 19 targets for 91 yards. I mean, it's been volume, volume, volume for Jamar Chase since Joe Flacco came into town. And it's been production, 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 right? It's been wide receiver 2, wide receiver 5, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 3. When you look at the targets, 10, 12, 23, 19. Let's not forget, the Bengals are a bad team. They have a bad defense. And so even though they're putting up points on the board, they're going to allow a shit ton of points on a weekly basis, which is going to force the Bengals to pass the ball. Joe Flacco has attempted over 30 passes in every game as the Cincinnati Bengals. That's here to stay. We're going to see upwards of 40 passes a lot of times this season. And his presence has really improved the passing game for Cincinnati. Joe Flacco is not going to come and save the Bengals. He is not taking them to the Super Bowl. He is not going to be an every week winner. But guess what? For fantasy purposes, we don't give a shit. We don't care. For fantasy purposes, we want him to do exactly what he's been doing, and that is looking at Jamar Chase 15 plus times and getting the ball to the best receiver in football in his hands as often as possible. So they're definitely so excited. If you hung on to Chase and you kind of rode that, the ups and downs that he was giving you, you're now very happy, right? You're now very happy. So I just so happy to see it there. Jackson Dart, look, from a football perspective, it hasn't been great at all times. He didn't complete a ton of his passes, but from a fantasy perspective, he's still delivering good numbers. 19 plus fantasy points again this past week. He's done so in 4 of his last 5 games, hasn't scored fewer than 18 fantasy points in any game that span. That rushing element of his game, that's what's going to give him that weekly floor. People have asked me, Jackson Dart, Caleb Williams. I feel safer about Jackson Dart. I know that he's had some deficiencies in the passing game. I know he's made some poor throws. I know he's made some bad decisions. I know that doesn't have the same supporting cast. But guess what? He gives you the safer floor at the end of the day. Jackson Dart's rushing upside is really, truly giving him that extra, floor and that upside. So I look at Jackson Dart as he's not available in most leagues. But in 2 quarterback leagues, you're starting him each and every week. In super flex leagues, you're probably starting him each and every week as well. And in single quarterback leagues, he is someone that you can make a very strong case for, in 12 teams, especially 14 team leagues as an every week starter here, given that rushing element. Close it off with some big tight end performances this past weekend. Dallas Goedert scoring twice. He only had 3 targets, so just keep that in mind. But he does have 7 touchdowns in his last 7 games. He's found the end zone in all but 2 contests this season and has 2 games of multiple scoring, multiple touchdowns in 2 games this season. Now, keep in mind, A.J. Brown was out this week. That said, Goddard has established a solidified role in this offense. That's here to stay. I look at him as if you drafted him, you added him off waivers. I know some people added him off waivers. He's your every week starter. There's no need to look elsewhere. There's absolutely no need to look elsewhere, ladies and gentlemen. He's an every week starter. Doesn't matter who's out there. Doesn't matter if Gadsden's out there. Stay with Goddard. Same thing could be said about Tyler Kraft, who, I'll tell you this, man. He is fun to fucking watch. Like, you watch him, and he runs over defenders. his yards after catch ability, he's so physical. Like he is a really good tight end. He had 143 yards, two touchdowns on National Tight Ends Weekend. He's now scored a touchdown in three consecutive games. So if you had Kraft, if you added him off waivers, same thing, same philosophy. You don't need another tight end. You don't need a second tight end. If you have these guys, you don't need a second tight end, especially if they already had their bye weeks. Let's say we're not looking at the tight end position anymore. You're plugging in and playing the rest of the season with these guys. It's as simple as that. Simple as that. Um, Last thing here, the Broncos dominated the Cowboys. This game had one of the highest totals, but look, it's just truth be told, that defense for the Broncos are very good. I talked about it. I had my concerns about Dallas, kind of slowing down. Bo Nix had himself a great game, four touchdown passes there. Troy Franklin caught two of them. You look at RJ Harvey had a good game as well. Dobbins was still the featured back there, so keep that in mind. Harvey did more with less, but Dobbins did lead the backfield in opportunities. And we'll talk a little bit about my thoughts on Harvey there, and as well as Troy Franklin when we're talking about waivers and roster management situations here. But I'll tell you this: keep an eye on Patrick Surtain's injury. He was injured in this game. He is obviously a huge, huge piece of this defense there in Denver. So for me, he's someone that you just got to keep an eye on here and see what happens there when it comes to his injury. But I'll tell you this, man, that defense, like they have been very, very dominant. And this is a team that kind of got off to, I don't want to say a slow start, right? But they weren't playing their best football. They weren't playing their best football here, and they're kind of getting it, kind of clicking on all cylinders here right now. Bo Nix, who has been erratic at times this season, has looked good the last couple of weeks here. So again, something to keep in mind. But like I said, Patrick Surtain, you have to keep an eye on that because he's going to be out for multiple weeks with that pec strain. They haven't officially put him on IR. They said he's a potential candidate for IR, but he is considered week to week here. So I would not be stunned. Like the report suggests he could miss a couple of games. It could miss a couple of weeks. It's definitely something to keep a very close eye out, though, right? Because he is such a big part of this defense. Something that thrives there in Denver, that defense. All right, let's take a look at some roster management. All right, we're going to talk waivers, we're going to talk trades, and we're going to talk some buys and sells. Okay. And I'm going to start off with trade talk. And this is just my thoughts on trading, how I handle trades, what I'm looking for in trades. Because I get asked so many, and I mean so many. And if you're a subscriber at fantasyguru.com and you're listening to this, you're there. You're seeing all the questions we get asked daily. We got a trade channel. We got a waiver wire channel. We got our NFL seasonal channel. We got start sit channel. We got all the channels, everything over there at fantasyguru.com. So if you're there, you're seeing all the questions we're getting. And a lot of the times, trades don't make sense, right? For me, it has to make sense. You have to, when you're asking me about a trade, when you're asking me about, it has to make sense. And what does making sense mean? Well, number one, how does a trade improve your roster? How is acquiring those players improving your roster? How does it change the dynamic of your roster, right? What is the goal of your trade? These are all questions you have to ask yourself when you're making trades. Like, what is the goal of this trade for me? How is it changing the dynamic of my roster? How is it improving my roster? And is it going to pay off, right? Like, those are all the things. And the last one, you probably won't know. You won't know until the end of the season whether a trade is going to pay off or not. That's for certain, right? So number one, all right, what's the goal in your trade? So first of all, you got to look at your roster. You got to evaluate your roster. What are you deep at? What do you need help at? What can you afford to lose? What can you afford to give? And then the next step is looking for a team that has the needs the players of needs on your roster, right? So let's for the sake of this conversation here, we're going to use You're hurting at the running back position. You're super deep at wide receiver. Sounds like a lot of my rosters based on the way I draft, right? So guess what? In these situations, you can afford to give up some of your wide receiver depth to upgrade your running back position. I'm not looking to give up one of my running backs to get another running back in return if I'm weak at running back. That does not make any damn sense. Zero. No, I'm going to get where I'm strong at, and I'm going to look at a team that is weak at that position, but strong at the position that I'm in need of, and I'm going to see how I can help that team help me. And that's what trades should really be. You help someone help you get better. That is the way it is. There's no secret to it. I know everyone wants to go out and everyone wants to go and fleece the other opponent. They want to go out there and, get, fucking come out like winners, bandits. No, man. No, you can't. Your intention should not be to go and screw another team over. Is there going to be lopsided trades? Absolutely. It happens all the time. Everyone has different opinions on players. All right. Everyone has a different opinion. I will pay more for Michael Pittman than most people are willing to pay for simply because I was high on Michael Pittman going into the season and he is delivering exactly what I expected and more. And I'm willing to go and pay that tag because I think that that's here to stay, right? So I value Michael Pittman more than you might value Michael Pittman. So if you're trying to get Michael Pittman off my team, the asking price is probably going to be too high for you, right? So you have to understand that as well. Then you have to understand there's name value and there's actual production value, and you have to be able to decipher between the two. You really have to be able to decipher between the two, right? So that's how I go about trades, right? Like go find the teams that are weak at positions of your strength and are strong at positions of your weaknesses and find a way to meet halfway where you're improving that team's roster and also improving your roster. Player swaps, please stop player swapping. If you want a player swap, don't ask me for my advice. Don't ask anyone for their advice because if you're swapping players, it's a matter of preference at that point, right? If you're trying to trade an RB2 for another RB2, look at exactly what I just said. An RB2 for another RB2. You're not improving the dynamic of your roster. You're not improving your roster. You're not helping yourself. All you're doing is swapping players. At that point, it's a matter of preference, right? Like if I want to get a wide receiver two on my team and you have a wide receiver two on my team and I prefer the one you have, that's my choice. You're basically splitting hairs here between a lot of these guys, right? So there's no need to player swap. That does not help you. It does not help you. Just like trading for your handcuffs. This does not help you, ladies and gentlemen. Like trading for your handcuffs is not something I do. I don't want to give up RJ Harvey to secure my handcuff and get Tyler Algier. Why? Because they're the same guy, just different backfields. If J.K. Dobbins goes out, I'm expecting Harvey to assume the majority of the workload. If Bijan Robinson goes out, I'm expecting Tyler Algier to assume the majority of the workload. We're trading the same guy. It's the same guy. Do you like pepperoni or not on your pizza? I like pizza. It doesn't matter, pepperoni or not. Give me the pizza. It is what it is. That's what we're doing, right? It's a matter of preference. It's a matter of who you like a little bit more, right? Trading for injured players. I don't like doing that. I do not like doing that. Why? You're taking on assuming risk that you don't need to. If you want to assume the risk, if you think that the payoff is worth it, then make the trade. But me, I don't like taking that risk. I don't like giving up someone that's producing for me, giving me fantasy points for someone who's hurt. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if that player is going to return. We don't know if he's going to re-aggravate the injury. We don't know. We simply don't know. Brandon Ayuk is someone that hasn't played all season. There's been a lot of mixed reports. Like, do I add him? Do I drop? Look, Ayuk is not someone that I'm going out of my way to add, going out of my way to target because we don't know how he's going to look. We saw with Godwin. He came back and he's out now again, right? Like these things happen with some of these players. They come back too fast. They're not 100% ready. They suffer some type of re-aggravation. And then you trade it away for someone who misses more time. Sometimes it will pay off, sure, but the times that not, the risk reward factor for me is not worth it, right? Like it's not worth it because the percentage of time that it pays off significantly is so small that it's just not worth it for me. So trading for injured players, not something I do. Never. I don't like it. Now, also depends on the injury, right? A concussion we know what the league protocols are on the concussion, especially for first time guys or even second time guys. Now, if it's someone like a Tua Tagovailoa where he suffered a ton of concussions throughout his career, sure. Like now, there's gonna very good chance that he misses multiple weeks. But for the most part, a lot of these players miss 1 week. Very few. I think only Marvin Harrison Jr., if I'm not mistaken, is the only one that has returned like 1 week within 1 week of suffering a concussion. Outside of that, it's usually 1 week out, and then they're back the following week. Like that's kind of the trend that we've seen in the NFL for a lot of these players. So in those situations, sure, I don't mind taking it because it's the kind of injury, right? Because it's a concussion. It's not a ligament. It's not a knee. It's not an ankle. It's not an arm. It's not a hip. It's a concussion where we know the drill. Like there's a protocol in the league for it. You go through the protocol, you go through the hoops, and then you're back in action. And it's not going to impact your play, right? It's not going to you got they get their in the NFL, people get their bell rung all the time, right? Like we know what's happening. So again, I don't like trading for injured players. That's a big no-no for me. So just it's very simple, guys. Like always try to find a way to help you or help someone else help you, right? Like it should be like just being a human being, like be kind, like be nice, try to get a good trade, try to help that person, let that person help you, and that's it. Swapping players, QB for QB, oh, trading who Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Jonathan Taylor for Bijan Robinson. What are we doing? What the hell are we doing? Doesn't make sense. Zero. None. Come on. Let's, we have to, when we're making trades, it has to make sense. And I don't like making speculation trades either. Oh, I'm trading this player in case I don't assume in trades. I'm taking the facts, the information at hand. That's what I'm taking. All right. So when you're trading, make sure it upgrades your roster. It changes the dynamic of your team. You're not swapping players. You're not trading for injured players. You're not trading for 1 week rentals. That's something I didn't discuss. We're not trading for 1 week rentals. We don't do that. Even if you need to win this week, we're not trading for 1 week rentals. It doesn't help your team long term. If you need a 1 week rental, check out the waiver wires. Or you can make a trade, but don't give up too much. Don't overpay for 1 week. All right. So those are some things when we're looking at trades that we have to keep in mind here. And if it's not making sense, or if it's not upgrading your roster, or if it's not changing the dynamic of your roster, it's maybe not worth it. All right. Talked about waivers. So let's look at some of the guys that we're looking at waivers this week here. Joe Flacco. We talked about he might not be out there in a lot of your leagues. Maybe he's out there in some, but great matchup against the Bears defense this upcoming week. They're top 10 in fantasy points per game allowed at the position, giving up the third most, passing yards. Should attempt 30, 40 passes here between that range. I'm good. I'm good with Flacco. I'm good with streaming Flacco. There's a lot of good quarterbacks on by this week. We talked about that. We talked about Fields is not a great quarterback from fantasy standpoint. People were counting him. Baker Mayfield, Jalen Hurts, all quarterback that are pretty much weekly starters in most leagues, right? So Joe Flacco, good plug and play. Sam Darnold, another good plug and play this week if needed. Faces Washington. They've given up the fourth most passing yards, fifth most fantasy points per game, tied for fourth most passing touchdowns allowed. Another good quarterback that you can stream this week. This doesn't mean he's a top 12 on my board this week, but again, if you're hurting at the position, these are guys that are out there in waivers who can help you this week. JJ McCarthy expected to be back this week for the Vikings. I went into the season really excited about this young man. I had high expectations, and he did not look good early in the season. Then he suffered the injury. He's been out since, and let's see how he looks when he's returned. Someone that you can add as a speculative add. Really wouldn't want to trust him this week against Detroit, but if you have no other choice, there are definitely worse candidates out there on waivers than JJ McCarthy. The supporting cast is phenomenal in Minnesota. We know that. The coaching is stellar. It's just a matter of, can this young man get it together and produce? And look, we have to remember, he doesn't have much experience in the NFL. Still, uh, very raw. So there are going to be growing pains, but we definitely need to see better than what we saw early in the season, right? We definitely need to see better than that. At the running back position, Tyron Tracy, I talked about it before, looks scatterable out for the season. Tracy played in 28 of the final 36 snaps this past weekend. I mentioned before 17.5 opportunities per game from week 5 on in the 2024 season there for New York. I'm expecting him to be their primary running back here. I think he's going to be their featured back, and I think that's going to lead to a lot of opportunities here. If he's out there, 20 to 30% fab should be spent on him, in my opinion. If you want to be a little bit more aggressive on a running back needy team, I will not talk you out of that whatsoever. RJ Harvey, look, and Travion Henderson, two guys. They might not be available in your league, but I have seen that they've been dropped in a lot of leagues. Two guys I'm adding. All right. Harvey, like I said, he did more with less this weekend, scoring multiple touchdowns. Okay. I'm not chasing the touchdown production. I'm chasing the potential. He's that home run hitter. If Dobbins were to miss any time at any point in the season, Harvey is going to be that home run hitter for fantasy managers. These are the kind of assets that I want on my bench. We're going to talk about, your bench now, right? We talked about trades. So we're going to talk about bench now after the waiver wire section here. Um, these are the kind of assets you want on your bench. Henderson, the same thing. Like Henderson looked like the better running back. The Patriots continue to lean on from Andre Stevenson, but Henderson has looked like the better running back at times. And I think that at any moment, right, any moment, if Stevenson fumbles again, Stevenson misses time, we can see Henderson see a larger role here for the Patriots. So, guys, I'm stashing right there. Trey Benson, he remains on IR, but he is eligible to return in week 10. The fact that they got rid of Michael Carter tells me that they expect Benson to be back by week 10 when he's eligible to return. If he's still out there, you don't have to bid a lot. I think 3 to 6% will get it done for you if you want to get a little bit more aggressive just to secure him. Sure, 5 to 10 would be the max I would go. Um, but I don't think you have to go all that much. He's someone that once he returns, I expect him to be the every down back for Arizona. Like that's what we wanted. He was a high priority for me this season. Got exactly what we thought, right? Like Connor went down, Benson took over. He just went down right after. So like we never saw the production come to fruition, but there was without question the role is going to be there for Trey Benson, someone that I strongly recommend adding if he's still out there. Um, Tank Bigsby talked about him with the Saquon Barkley injury. He's someone that if you want to handcuff Barkley, do think you can. Tajay Spears seeing production there. There's been rumors that Tony Pollard could get traded. I'll be honest, I don't care to me too much to be invested in this backfield. The Titans look like the worst team in football, if not one of the worst teams in football. Cam Ward has been a complete bust so far. Um, this team stinks. This team stinks, and it's not a great investment. Like investing in the running back of a team that stinks because you're playing from behind quite often, so it takes away the run game there. Um, Isaiah Davis, for those who have Brees Hall, I think it's an interesting addition there. We've seen him operate as the primary backup to Hall. There's been rumors regarding Brees Hall being traded. I like I said, I don't make moves on speculation, but this is not something that's going to cost you a ton, right? You go out there, you pick up Davis if you have the extra roster spot, extra bench spot, and you secure the backfield, right? Because you know that the opportunities are going to be there for Davis should Hall miss any time. And then Devin Singletary is someone that, again, he's going to be the backup to Tyron Tracy right now. They could add another running back here in the equation. They haven't done so yet, but if they do, then Singletary obviously will lose some value. But for now, he is that second running back there. Um, and then at the receiver position, okay, look, I've been talking about this guy all season long. Like I feel like I don't know why he's still out there in over 40% of leagues. Like it's just mind-boggling to me. And that's Troy Franklin. He's someone that you can comfortably play as your flex option in time of need at any given time. You don't have to start these players. Remember, we don't have to start these players. But Troy Franklin, I mean, coming off a huge performance there against Dallas Cowboys, catching two touchdown passes, 89 yards, six catches. Now has a touchdown, at least one touchdown in each of his last two games. Someone that dominates the red zone targets there in Denver. He leads the team in that department. And there's that chemistry between him and Bo Nix. They played college together. Yes, Cortland Stunt's still the number one wide receiver in Denver, but Franklin is a solid number two. He is a very solid number two. Zero reasons why he should be out there in any waiver wires. Like, there's no reason why Christian Watson should be on your roster and Troy Franklin on waivers. No reason whatsoever. Franklin is far more stable. I think there's far more upside, and I mean, this young man is playing good football. We saw it this weekend. He's capable of. He's had already a couple of big performances like that. Um, is it going to be volatile? Yeah, he can be volatile, sure. But man, this kind of asset is someone you definitely want to have on your roster, whether you're starting him or not. Looking at the Texans receiver, Jalen Noel, Jalen Higgins did a good job filling in this weekend. Even Xavier Hutchinson did a good job filling in this weekend, with filling in the void for the absence of Nico Collins and Christian Kirk. The one that stands out to me, look, I think Collins is going to be back, obviously. Noel, however, he's operating primarily out of the slot, right? So with him being there out of the slot, he's someone that I definitely um, think you can continue to roll out if needed, right? This is a slot position that is very fruitful in Houston, and one that, so long as Christian Kirk is out, I think Noel's going to continue to carve out a decent role there. So again, he's someone that if he's out there, these two guys, you can make a case for both, right? But I think the safer bet there is Noel. I don't see it being a huge week at the receiver position, right? I'm not gonna sit here and you know target a lot of these guys that had some big weeks. I'm not chasing, the Chimere Dike. I'm not chasing this. We talked about not wanting to be invested in Tennessee. Sure, super deep leagues, right? We're talking about super deep leagues. Yeah, but in 10, 12 shallow bench leagues, not necessarily people I am interested in. Oronde Gasson, if he's still available, highly doubt it. Make sure you're getting him. Mason Taylor, if he's still available, another one you can consider. Obviously, they have the bye week up this upcoming week, so not going to be of service to you this week. Therefore, not someone you're going to add for this week. But again, he might be dropped this week, so you can pick him up for week 10 once the week 9 is behind us. Okay, and then Loveland. Colson Loveland there is someone you can definitely consider in deeper formats. But not a great week, right? Like not a great week. There's going to be people dropping Hawkinson, I'm sure. So keep an eye on like drops. Like this is a big week where you look at drops, see who gets dropped, and then make decisions based off who's dropped, who's not, and go from there at the tight end position. All right, let's talk about some buys and some sells. Buying Justin Jefferson right now, right? Like I think the perception is low on him right now, given he's not producing the numbers we're used to. He's not, the quarterback play has been kind of fluky in Minnesota this year. And there could be some frustrated managers out there. If that's the case, I like taking advantage of these situations and buying Justin Jefferson. Don't mind giving up someone who's been hot lately, selling high on some guys. And we'll talk about some of the guys I'm selling. You might be able to package some of these guys or even move one for one with these players. Woody Marks, I talked a little bit about him. I like the idea of buying Woody Marks. You don't have to pay a premium price for him, I think. And he's the kind of running back that even if I'm not starting, I do want on my roster. I do want on my bench. He gives me that nice depth piece. You look at the production in PPR scoring, RB6, RB53, RB16, RB14 the last 4 weeks, 17, 7, 10, 11 are rush attempts, and you look at 5-1, 5-4 targets. So he's very involved in the passing game. At least 4 targets in 3 of his last 4 games. Very involved in the passing game. Has 2 receiving touchdowns over the course of the last 4 games. So someone who's definitely producing decent numbers there for you. And again, he's not a high end priority for a lot of people. He's actually still available in some leagues out there. So if you could get him for a cheap price tag, I think it's a good time before, I do think he's going to eventually be that primary guy that they lean on more than they lean on Chubb. Chubb is still very much involved. I think as we get later and later into the season, we're going to see more of Woody Marks there. Ashton Genty, another player that I like buying low on. He coming off the bye, so you don't have to deal with bye weeks anymore. The volume is going to be there for him. Yes, the production has been all over the place. But when you look at the last 3 weeks, he's been a top 12 running back in 2 of the last 4 weeks. He's been a top 18 running back in PPR scoring in 3 of the last 4 weeks. If he could continue to give, RB2 numbers the rest of the way, I think you could get him for a good price right now. The morale is low there. Yeah, I know expectations were through the roof. He's coming off one of his worst performances before the bye week. Obviously he's coming off the bye week, but in week 7, 4.4 PPR points per game. Not good. All right. Not good whatsoever. He had 21 rushing yards on 6 attempts and 13 receiving yards on 1 target, 1 catch. So again, I think you can get him at a low price. and you don't have to deal with the bye weeks anymore. Travion Henderson, another guy. Again, I've talked about him adding him. You could buy him low too. Selling high. All right, selling high. Kimani Vidal. Look, I love what I've seen so far from this young man. It's very exciting. But Hampton will return, right? The expectations are that Hampton returns. And Vidal, once that happens, is gonna go back to the backup role. Like he's not gonna be as involved. So I like the idea of selling Kimani Vidal now. I will say this. They have a phenomenal matchup this week against the Titans, who we just talked about. So if you want to hang on to Vidal for one more week, hope he just annihilates this this Titans defense, and then sell him at even higher, sure. But then you also have the risk of he doesn't produce the same numbers that you're hoping he does against the Titans. And I'm not saying that's the case, but if he does it, and maybe you don't have the value that you wanted from him. Still, I view him as a sell high option. Orlando Gatson. So I had an interesting question the other day in Discord, and I feel like this is the right answer to these kind of questions, right? Orlando Gatson, if you had it, Orlando Gatson, because you in the business of adding two tight ends and you have another reliable tight end, this is what I would do. Put both of them on the trading block, right? Put both of them out there. Whoever gives you the best haul is the one you want to trade. However, if you have a Ron Gatson, this is a perfect time to sell. The selling window is now. You're getting premium price, you're going to get a good return. And at the end of the day, if you don't need to carry two tight ends. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but you don't need to carry two tight ends. So for me, I look at him as a very good sell high candidate because his value is through the roof right now, a very hot commodity. Again, I mentioned if he was out there on waivers, you go out there, you add him. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to keep him. You could trade him, but you go out there, you add him. He's a strong asset right now, one that I think can get you a good return. And then Jalen Waldo, I think the volume has been there. I think it's going to continue to be there, but I do expect some ups and downs for Miami's offense. And if I can trade a player who I'm expecting volatility from, I would. And Jalen Waller, you're getting probably going to get a good haul on him because everyone knows that he's their primary receiver right now. Everyone knows it. He's going to be the focal point in the passing game there for Miami alongside Devon Achane. So I'm pretty sure you can get a good return for someone like a Jalen Waller. And like, if you do by any chance have a Kamani Vidal and Jalen Waller, like you can package those two guys and get a very good quality player. And in addition to getting a quality player, you might also be able to get a handcuff, right? Like it could be a star player with a handcuff. It could be a star player with a depth piece. So keep that in mind there. But these are kind of the players I'm selling. I closing out this podcast. All right, this is gonna be very quick. And what we want to do with our benches here. And look, I like being proactive, but not proactive enough where I'm going to roster two quarterbacks for a week 11 bye heading into week 9, or two tight ends for a week 12 bye heading into week 9. I do the week of. I don't. This is the time right now, and that every fantasy manager right now should be looking at their roster and seeing how can we cut the fat from this roster. The fat is the extra tight end, the extra quarterback, two defenses, the extra kicker, hanging on to a wide receiver 7 when you could be adding your running back 6. I right now, all your benches should consist of, outside of having a quarterback on bye this week, right? So if you have Jalen Hurts, you have Baker Mayfield in your lineups, right, or in your rosters right now, this is the week you have two quarterbacks. The only week you have two quarterbacks. I don't care who you add. I don't care what they do this week. It's the only week you have two quarterbacks, right? Tight ends, like the same thing. This is if you have Dallas Goedert on your roster and you need another, tight end, this is the week you do so. I would hold on to Goddard. I would have that second tight end, and then again, we go back to moving on the rest of the way. Who's going to be our guy? It's going to be Goddard. So what I'm looking for in my benches right now, it's very simple. I want running back depth, most importantly, and wide receiver depth. That's secondary to me, right? I feel like you can replace a wide receiver easier off waivers than you can get a good quality running back. There's a lot of handcuffs out there, still out there. I see it. I'm seeing RJ Harvey still out there in some leagues. Henderson still out there in some leagues. Algier still out there in some leagues. Monangai is out there in some leagues. These are quality backups. And I mean quality backups. Like these are players that can carve out a significant role should the starting running back go out. So instead of hanging on to, the Tez Johnsons of the world, the Malik Washingtons of the world. Yes, he had a great game. Sure. I don't care. Instead of hanging on to these guys, get the running back depth. Trust when I say get the running back depth, because you know what happens if the starting running back for some of these teams miss any time, you're going to be one of those out there having to bid 50 to 60% of your fab to go get him, or 20 to 30 like we're doing with Tyron Tracy this week, right? So running back depth is key. No backup tight ends, no backup quarterbacks, absolutely no backup defense. I don't care if you have the best defense in football. Drop their asses and figure it out the rest of the way. Do not, I repeat, do not hold two defenses. Do not hold two kickers, two volatile positions that you do not need more than one of. In fact, you need zero of them. Every league should be zero kickers, zero defense, if we're being 100% honest. So there you go. We covered a ton of ground here today. We went over some of the takeaways from week 8. We talked some roster management with some waiver wires, trade talk, buys and sells, looking at cleaning up the bench spots, and so much more here on episode number 126 of the Armando Marsal podcast. Make sure you're checking out all of my work there over at fantasyguru.com. Follow me on the To The Machine at Armando_Marsal, as well as on Instagram, Threads, at Armando Marsal, and TikTok at Armando Marsal Pod. Right now, guys, by the way, I forgot to mention this early on the show, but I will say it now. Hopefully you stuck around this long and and you can take advantage of this. And now I'll say it first thing on the next podcast on Friday there. But we have a great promotion running right now. Ghost 20. Ghost 20. That's right. And spare the Halloween week. We got Ghost 20. Get you 20% off any of our subscriptions there over at fantasyguru.com. We got NBA content rolling right now. NHL team is doing a great job there. And NBA has been on fire, by the way. It's been very profitable thus far in DFS and betting and stuff like that there at the NBA team. So make sure you're checking that out. You can also, if you don't have our VIP or DFS stuff for the NFL, been a really good season so far. Betting team has been on fire too. Take advantage of that, right? Because a lot of content here, a lot of football still to be played. So make sure you're taking advantage of all of that there. Remember, if you're enjoying the podcast, if you're enjoying the episode, make sure you're following, rating, reviewing, liking the podcast wherever it is you're consuming it. Again, thank you so much all for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed this week's journey through the mind of Marsal. Until next time.